we added the jokes, and we were at least smart enough to keep the plot serious,
Right.
the way the Zero Hour was. But I think the real breakthrough in Airplane was that we cast serious actors and not comedians, and that had never been done, in making a comedy without comedians, which made the movie as successful as it was, but also made it very hard to pitch to a studio.
Sure. And some of those actors, Peter Graves, Robert Stack, Leslie Nielsen, and Lloyd Bridges, they were all very prominent in dramatic acting at that point, right?
Yeah, that's why we chose them, because we didn't want them to be funny, and that took a little doing, because the actors see a comedy and they think, well, I want to be funny. Great that they think I'm funny. But we kept sort of trying to tell them, no, we don't think you're funny, politely, and that's why you're perfect for this. And
Right.
In essence, what we told them was, not even to play it straight, but pretend that you don't know you're in a comedy. And that's what makes it work, that they're just completely innocent, naive of the fact that all this craziness is going on around them, or that the lines they say are goofy.
And when when you think about it, it sort of adds another layer to the movie, that all these guys were willing to come on board and essentially send up their whole careers, make
Right.
fun of the whole body of work, to be an Airplane and say those lines.
How did you convince these guys to come do this sort of oddball script? Who did you get to sign on first, and what was your pitch to these guys?
Well, it was a little tricky. Peter Graves thought it was the worst piece of rubbish he had ever read. He didn't, but it was great having Howard W. Koch being a producer on it, because he knew all these guys and he was very respected. He was a former president of Paramount Pictures, president of the Academy of Motion Pictures, and so he was a great guy. We were lucky to have him on board. But he called Peter Graves and say, "Hey, just meet the boys. They're really nice." And really, with all of these people, I think we got them mostly through Howard, and I think Leslie Nielsen was the only one, who said later, I would have paid them to do this film. I mean, he just loved it because he was a closeted comedian, and he was like kind of like a fish in water with all this. And
we went to Leslie after 3 other actors turned down that part. So I mean, when we went to our casting director at Paramount, who was already brave enough to put his name on a comedy starring Robert Stack, Lloyd Bridges, and Peter Graves, he just exploded. He said, Leslie Nielsen's the guy you go to the night before, and we were already 3 weeks away from shooting. So, but he turned out to be, the one who had the most fun with it, really,
Yeah.
and the longest career out of it.
Right, because 2 of you at least went on and worked with him in the Naked Gun series, and it went on for years with him sort of playing that same sort of role.
yeah,
Right.
he
Yeah.
became a comedian. I mean, and in his own right, and starred in movies, and so yeah, it was great, and we were thrilled to see it. Well, I guess we all started it with Naked Gun, but we were just thrilled to see it continue for him, because he's just the greatest guy. And really, we all kind of had shared a sense of anarchy. He was we like to poke fun at the big guys, and that was exactly Leslie. He had this little fart machine that he was kind of famous for, and
Right.
he would, and you look at him, he looks very dignified and straight, and very handsome guy. And he'd walk onto elevators with this thing, and with a total straight face. He wouldn't crack up or, acknowledge that it was a joke. So we were very much of very similar minds.
Mhm. Now, it's unusual, I think, for three people to serve as directors on a film. But obviously, the three of you did it. How did it possibly work having three people directing at the same time?
Well,
No, it's really no problem. We all, everybody kind of would read the script, and then we'd watch the monitors, and
Yeah,
so
I walked into that. That's
it actually, I wouldn't necessarily suggest it to three people maybe that didn't know each other really well, or were really on the same page with the kind of comedy they were making. But the three of us kind of developed this kind of comedy together. The idea of playing it that straight and casting serious. There was a certain twist that we put on. So on the set, we would mostly talk about how to fix something if it wasn't working. And not that there weren't some disagreements, but really, well, that's the other thing. We have three, so it's 2 out of 3. We get an instant decision, but it never slowed us down. And as a matter of fact, I mean, it really helped having three people there problem solving.
we were all of one mind. I mean, when we did that scene between Leslie and Peter Graves, where he says, "How soon can we land?" I mean, we did that in one take, and we looked at each other and just said, "That's fine." And it really helped us go faster, because if the three of us all said, "That's great," that was really a big help.
And we really spent the better part of 2 or 3 years sitting in a room together, writing every word of that script. And so we were, literally on the same page.
We had already argued over every word and comma and
in the writing
thing, and also in our mind, we'd act it out. And so we really, by the time we got to the set, we knew exactly how we wanted it to sound.
And the other thing that helped is that, we, over the years, since we established our theater on Pico Boulevard in West LA, we evolved a series of rules there. So we ended up with 15 rules of comedy, not necessarily for anybody else's comedy, but certainly for us, which I think gave us a discipline and really helped things go faster, because we would just say, "Hey, number 6," and then we all knew what was going on.
And the rules are in the book.
yeah.
And the only way you can learn those rules is to buy the book. Yes.
Right.
Or borrow someone else's. Yeah.
And I read in the book about the term, I think it was fluture, about how you can't have a joke going on in the front and in the background at the same time.
Okay, flucher dialogue. It's not exactly, one of the rules is you don't have. We do one joke at a time. We don't have 6 funny things going on at the same time, or even 2. And so if you're going to do something in the background, then the foreground people have to be talking about something that's unimportant and not a joke. And when we had to write extra lines to cover the joke in the background, we used to call that flucher dialogue.
Oh.
The perfect, good example of that is in the cockpit before the plane takes off. J.J. Walker is cleaning the windshield and checking under the hood for oil, and that's the joke. And then he falls, and in the foreground of the camera, there's Kareem and Peter just doing like airline pilot nothing.
Yeah.
And that was flicker dialogue. The other thing that I don't want to gloss over is the value of 0 hour. And literally, we just had to add jokes. There was actually 0 hour was a well-constructed 3-act play. There is a scene at the beginning of 0 hour where Julie says, "I can't live with the man I don't respect. And in the third act, she says, I want you to know now I'm so proud. And that was, closing the circle of that love story. And in the middle of the movie, and we took those lines right from 0 Hour. And in the middle of the movie is a line where Leslie says, we need to find someone back there who not only can fly this plane, but who didn't have fish for dinner. And that's a direct from 0 Hour.
And it gets a laugh, but we just copied that from 0 Hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it shows the strength of that 0 Hour script, the story.